Welcome to Essential Ingredients. I'm your host, Justine Reichman. Today with me is Rebecca Vaught from Heron Labs. Welcome, Rebecca. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Rebecca, can you tell us a little bit about Heron Labs?
Yeah, definitely. So we are an early stage biotechnology company. We are actually a pandemic-born startup. We, in essence, use genomic data and biocomputing to create genetically matched nutrients which optimize cellular and organismal performance.
Okay, so for those of us that are not science majors, and maybe that's a little bit above our vernacular or our everyday conversation speak. Could you break that down for us just a little bit? Because it sounds really smart and I know it's completely intelligent, but I'm afraid that a lot of the people out there that want to know about this may not necessarily understand exactly what that is in layman's terms.
Yeah, it just means, no problem. It just means that we are using genetic information, so based on the DNA code, to figure out what a cell or organism should be eating. So we are reading the roadmap, looking at a biofingerprint, and then giving the exact nutrients that match that, biological fingerprint.
Okay, so, and this was born during COVID. So what inspired you during COVID to launch this business?
So I guess a little bit more of the backstory. So we technically existed before the actual virus took hold here in the US. So we started out in the Texas Medical Center. We actually, me and my co-founder Alec, were actually accelerating the company within a program called BioVentures, which is organized by a nonprofit called Inventure. And that actually started in late January of 2021. However, the idea behind Heron Labs was really just theoretical. We didn't have any data. We were, testing it out whether or not it could be a business through that program. And basically our accelerator program got shut down, when the whole world shut down. That prompted us actually to create a home lab. So very Google style founder story. The person who the company is named after, James Van Heron, his family actually donated laboratory equipment, a full microbiology lab, to us. I drove back to Alabama from Houston, got that lab equipment, drove it back to Houston, and we built a home lab in Alec's house, basically the week after COVID happened, and started to get our preliminary data. So Heron Labs was an idea until COVID-19, and then it became a reality.
So I'm intrigued. You're a scientist, and so have you always been interested in this specific area? Was this what you know? Okay, you're shaking your head. So where did this passion come from?
This is completely new. This is actually the fourth scientific field that I've worked in my career. I have no formal training. I mean, I'll go through it. I have no formal training in what we're doing now. I have a bachelor's degree in molecular cell and microbial biology from Auburn, which is a fancy way of saying a microbiology degree. It was a very unique degree at the time, though. I also did 3.5 years of undergraduate research experience studying actually a unique Ateid shrimp species. So doing marine physiology and crustacean genetics and that type of thing. And then got really interested in mitochondria during the second year of my bachelor's degree, ended up basically pursuing that for my PhD, stayed on with evolutionary genetics, mostly looked at how mitochondria influence very key traits like aging. And it was while I was working within the aging space that I started to get interested in nutrition, because basically what I was learning is that, the genetics that I was studying for my PhD were very important, but nutrients are also extremely important for determining how long you live. And it was through that interest that I had the idea behind Heron Labs. Basically wrote it down as an idea in my notebook, graduated with my PhD about a year and a half later, and have been pursuing it ever since.
Wow, that's exciting. So this is a real passion project for you.
It
And so you've been working on it now for how long?
So yeah, we're at about a year and a half.
And so when you first launched this project, Van Heron Labs, what was your original vision for it?
It certainly wasn't where we are now. I don't think I could have predicted that we would be working within the, some of the verticals that we are in now. Particularly, one of the reasons we've come together is because we are focusing a lot on the alternative protein space. Didn't even know what alternative proteins were back then, had no idea that people were, growing actual meat and seafood products in a lab. And so it is very different from what I could have imagined, but it's been a lot of fun and I wouldn't have it any other way.
And so to date, being in this alternative protein space, what has been the greatest impact that you've seen so far for what you're doing?
There's so many impacts. I think, the biggest conversation are a lot of the ecological impacts, right? If we can actually grow the protein products in a lab or create it from other methods rather than actually harvesting the protein from animals. But one of the biggest impacts that I always bring up are some of the, core scientific impacts that we're getting from trying to do this very hard and very unique challenge. I think a lot of the innovation and scientific breakthroughs that come from trying to do this are going to inform virtually every other industry and every other practice in the future. And so I think that, aside from feeling very aligned with the mission of alternative protein, I think that's a core motivation for Van Heron Labs is, one of a scientific interest. It is a very hard, grand experiment that we're trying to do here. I think a lot of companies, when they're starting out, well, they say, find the lowest barrier to entry. What is the easiest version of your technology that you can do? And we have come at this from a very different perspective, and that is, let's do the hardest thing that we can possibly do, and that is actually alternative protein. And so that's why we're here, and so it's very motivating, and yeah, just excited to be a part of the space.
So when and I know you mentioned you were talking about nutrition, and that, you were interested in that. And when I think about nutrition and I think about it, when I think about alternative proteins, I think about the impact on our bodies and I think about the impact on the planet. So I'd love to hear your take on that as you're talking about what you're doing in the lab and how that plays a process for you.
Yeah, so definitely. I mean, I think,
or plays into your process, I should say.
Wait, sorry, say that again?
So I'm curious how wellness in our body and how the planet, how that integrates into your thought process as you're in the lab.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of my core motivations is I love meat. I am a meat eater. It is a very, optimal source of nutrients for human beings, but the way that we're going about, getting those meat and particularly seafood products is just completely, unsustainable. And so one of the things that really motivates us, or one of the things that we think about a lot is, that it is an optimal source of nutrition, and we need to solve this problem so that it is a viable source of nutrients for the human population going forward, even as the population continues to grow and grow and grow. And speaking of the population, obviously there are a lot of ecological impacts, which you've mentioned. And I do have some marine and crustacean background. And so I think about that a lot. It's virtually two disciplines, cultured meat and cultured seafood. And I find working within the cultured seafood space extremely motivating because the impact on the oceans, the impact on those ecosystems is direct. Some of the species that folks are trying to recreate within the lab are, endangered. And so we think about that a lot when we're, thinking about who our next clients are going to be, or developing our technology further, or, how can we, truly accelerate the industry, but make the biggest impacts possible.
Yeah, it's an interesting industry. It's a timely time to be in the industry, because even in the last year, I've seen so many changes, and I'd love to hear, just in the last year that you've been in it through COVID, talk to me about the changes you've seen, because I feel like this has been a really crazy time to be in this. It's really coming to the forefront. I mean, people are really starting to get involved and talk about this now. And we're now seeing it more than ever before.
Yeah, definitely. And I will be completely honest with you. I'll share a little bit more of our story, but we are fairly new to this space as well. So we are almost a part of that exponential, increase that we're seeing right now. So I knew of, cultured meat, alternative protein, of course. But I, didn't realize how many companies were actually in the space, did not realize, how far along the R&D efforts were and that sort of thing. And so in December, I actually, we do a lot of customer discovery, or we used to at Heron Labs, to build the company. And I happened to speak with a cultured meat executive and realized, not only is there a huge need for our technology, but just where companies were within the space. And so, it's not this nascent industry that it used to be. There are some companies that are really pulling this off pretty successful. I mean, there's huge challenges, right? Still to face, but even just in the 5 or 6 months that we've been here, we've seen a lot of very substantial impacts. Companies able to reduce the cost of their culture media, really, really substantially. There have been folks, able to produce whole cuts of, steaks, salmon out there. And so some companies have definitely figured this out. But, the whole industry is still in this, R&D heavy research scramble to try and scale. And so I think that is, the challenge for the next 6 months, the next few years is taking, those initial wins and then scaling them up to, a really viable industry that can feed a lot of people.
Essential Ingredients is powered by NextGen Chef. NextGen Chef is a movement that supports food and beverage entrepreneurs around the world by fostering a sense of community and providing its members access to mentors and a wealth of resources and guidance. NextGen Chef feeds members with the knowledge they need to build better for you food and beverage businesses, so the world can have greater access to healthier food, comprehensive food education, and increased affordability. If you like what you hear on this podcast, continue the conversation or ask new questions on the NextGen Chef app, available in the Apple Store and Google Play. Follow NextGen Chef on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook at NextGen Chef. Join NextGen Chef and let's change the future of the food industry together.
So you talk about your technology, and you talked about some of the companies that said how great it would be able to have access to your technology and the impact it would have. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are a lot of companies that are within the alternative protein space.
Can you give us an example, maybe just for our listeners to maybe better understand who would be an example of that?
Yeah, so within alternative proteins, it's any protein that's not produced from an animal. So it could be plant, it could be produced from fermentation, it could be produced from cells that folks are culturing in the lab. And basically,
so just so our listeners might have an idea, would that be like just egg? Would that be, what would be an example, just so people can get an idea of what kind of products would use this?
Yeah, so I'm trying to think of some of the bigger companies that are out there. We are primarily within the cultured meat and seafood space. So some of the big players are Blue Nalu, Memphis Meats, Meatable are some of the larger companies that are there. So those are everything from pork products to, bluefin tuna. Wild Type is making salmon. So there's even a company in Australia that's making laboratory cultured kangaroo. So there's really a broad spectrum of products out there. And then there are other companies, that are using fermentation practices to create the final protein products. But the similarities that each of those companies have, or the kind of the defining features, that at some point in their process, they're going to have to use this nutrient broth, right, to create their final protein product. That nutrient broth is called media. It's not, news media or anything like that. It's literally a nutrient soup. And you put your cell or your protein in there, and there's basically a chemical reaction that happens, and that allows you to produce your final meat product via your, process of choice. And that's where Van Heron Labs really comes in. We are a way to optimize that culture media so that you get a higher ultimate, protein product for a much cheaper price. And so we are our big challenge right now is trying to massively stimulate cellular growth at, a fraction of how you would do this at a pharmaceutical scale, which I think is the, one of the big characteristics of this entire industry is, we need massive cellular growth for food grade prices. And so that's the challenge that Van Heron Labs is trying to tackle, and we're trying to do it in a completely customized way. So taking into account, the cell's genetics, its environment, and then the specific needs of the company, what challenge it is that they're trying to face head on. And so we're trying to be that unique, customized solution for the alternative protein space when it comes to culture media.
And so who would be your dream clients?
I would say we've already gotten our dream clients and are working with them right now. Yes, it's very exciting. We're working with some amazing companies doing just amazing things. I will have to say, some of the brightest minds in the world have come together to work on this problem because it is so hard. And so that has been extremely motivating, and it just really makes it a pleasure to come to work every day and email the clients and do project management because everyone is on the same page and is just at such a high level. It's just been really cool.
And so what are your hopes and for Van Heron Labs for the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think our overall goals are to keep going, to try to make an impact and just grow the company. And, it's hard for me to exactly make big expectations. Even in just this first year and a half, we've already exceeded everything that I thought we would up until this point. And so anything on top of that is just, kind of icing on the cake. Now, having said that, I will say that right now we are bootstrapped, pre-revenue, with one full-time employee. So any growth,
is that full-time employee you?
That is me. Yes, that is yours truly. So any growth on top of that would just be wonderful.
Well, it all starts with one, right? So, and an idea. So, and in terms, you're really working to change the future of food, and in a big way. And so I think that as we look at the changing dynamic of the future of food, what's your hope for changing the future of food? What's your role in it?
Yeah, oh my gosh, so many things. I just want to see this whole industry become commercially viable, see cultured meat products in the grocery store, see folks buying, alternative protein products at sporting events, at drive-through restaurants, and it becoming very mainstream and, making an impact on a positive impact on the planet. And then also serving, as great nutrition for our fellow humans. So that's really my only motivation for this. And I hope that Van Heron Labs can play a small role in that.
And if folks wanted to get in touch with you, how would they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me via LinkedIn. My email is also there. There's a link to our website. You can read more about us. You can follow our LinkedIn. We try to post updates there.
What is your LinkedIn?
Van Heron Labs.
Okay. You want to make sure that everyone has it.
Yes.
All righty. And I want to thank you so much for joining me today, Rebecca. It was great to catch up with you, learn a little bit about Van Heron Labs, what you're doing. You're really doing such great work, and I'm going to continue to follow you and share
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for
Oh,
having
it was
me on.
my pleasure. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us. We have new episodes drop every Tuesday on Instagram. They drop on iTunes, on iHeartRadio. You can follow us at Essential Ingredients with Justine Reichman. So we look forward to seeing you here again next Tuesday. Thanks again.
To find out more about this episode of Essential Ingredients and access show notes, check out Next Gen Chef and choose podcast in the menu bar. If you like this episode, head to iTunes or Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel to subscribe. Learn more about Next Gen Chef, the platform that powers this podcast, by checking out our website or visit us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Next Gen Chef. You can also check out my Instagram at Justine_Reichman. If you have thoughts about this episode or future episode ideas, leave us a comment at Next Gen Chef's YouTube channel or drop an email at team@nextgenchef.com. Thanks for joining us.